Hey everyone, welcome along to FBP Live, episode 21. 21 already. Today we are talking about batching and repurposing your podcast. So I'm Chantal Broderick, host of the Fitness Business Podcast, and I know that a few of you have been tuning in regularly to this series. This is a special series that I put together, which is all about how to start your own podcast. So as most of you know, this show's been going for nearly 3 years now. We're going to be celebrating our 3-year birthday very, very soon. So I'm hoping that some of the things that I've shared over the last, about 11 episodes or so, I hope that you found them useful. And if you are thinking about starting your own podcast, and if you missed any of the episodes that I've already done, then go back and take a listen. You can check them out on our YouTube channel, which you will find at YouTube, and then just type in or search for Fitness Business Podcast, and you can catch up on all of the episodes up until this point. Now, believe it or not, we are nearly at the end. This is actually the last episode in our How to Start Your Very Own Podcast series. So we have come a long way, and today I want to talk to you, as I said, about batching and repurposing your content. Before we do any of that, before we even get to that, I want to tell you something really, really exciting, because this morning I interviewed someone who I have been hanging out to interview ever since I read her book. And for anyone, so it's freezing here in Sydney, by the way. So if I look like I'm cold, it's because I'm cold. But I read this lady's book in, I think it might have been March this year. So if you remember, if you're a regular listener of the show, you might recall that that we had Peter Docker on the show. So he was the co-author of Find Your Why, and he came on to talk about his book. But during that interview, I asked him the question, what book do you recommend? And he recommended Permission to Screw Up. Hey, Patrick, great to see you. He recommended Permission to Screw Up by Kristen Haddad. Now, I read it straight away and loved it. And the reason that I loved this book so much was because of the parallels between her business and what she has gone through as a manager and a leader, and what I see in so many fitness businesses. So she basically tells a story about how she founded a company called Student Made, how she employed a whole lot of millennials, how she went through the journey of understanding how they learn, what it was like to be a leader, how to manage, how to hire, how to fire, how to give feedback. And the book just steps through that entire journey. And as I was reading it, there was just, lesson after lesson that I felt would be really relevant to so many of our owners and managers out there in the FBP family. So as soon as I finished reading the book, I jumped online and tried to get hold of her. And thankfully I did. And that interview happened this morning. So it's all recorded, it's all done. Patrick, just in case you missed the beginning, I'm just talking about the interview that I did this morning with Kristen Haddad, who's the author. Hey, Rob, Kristen Haddad, who's the author of Permission to Screw Up. Now, if you guys haven't read this book yet, and if you manage teams, then I really highly recommend you check it out. I listened to it as an audiobook. You can buy the hard copy version, whatever is good for you. If you don't have a chance to read it yet, then make sure that you tune into the interview. I think I'll put it to air in June. So sometime in June, and basically we cover off all of those things that I just mentioned. So how to manage a team of millennials, not just millennials, but also we talk about Gen Z, who is like the next group coming out after millennials. So we talk about managing them, how to give feedback, how they best respond, some leadership tips in there. So it is just awesome. She's a beautiful, amazing person, and I was really stoked to have her join us on the show. So that will come out in June. Now, let's push that to the side. That was the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. Let's actually talk about our last episode of How to Start Your Very Own Podcast. So as I mentioned right at the beginning of the show, today I wanted to talk to you about batching. And don't worry if you don't know what that is, I'll explain it in a second, and repurposing. That's kind of what we're up to. So we have gone through the steps of how to get started, how to work out your target market, your topic, how to do everything from create the show to upload onto Libsyn. So now we're at the stage where we've got our show, and really we are looking at how do we streamline the processes and how do we ensure that the show can be turned into like multiple different varieties so that people can consume it in different ways. So first of all, batching. I first learned about batching after listening to, I think it was an episode of Amy Porterfield, Online Marketing Made Easy, which is one of my favorite podcasts out there. And she talked about how she was actually utilizing batching to improve the processes in her own show. And the concept is this, or I might take a step back and explain what we used to do to explain the difference between that and actually batching. So for us in particular, because we have a different guest each week, and obviously the content varies each week as it would with any podcast, what we originally did was I used to interview guests whenever it suited them. So to the point that, you know, if it meant that I had to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to do an interview, then I would. If it meant that I was interviewing 5 days a week, then I would. If it meant that I had to interview on a Saturday or a Sunday, then I would do that. So it meant that my whole week for the first couple of years of doing the show was just inundated with interviews whenever it suited the guest. Now, that was really good for the guest, and I think in a way we had to do that as we got started because we didn't have a brand and we weren't known, and we didn't have the volume of listeners and downloads that we do now. But what it meant is that my entire week was just a bit of a mess of different activities at all different times. There wasn't a lot of streamlining, there wasn't a lot of organization in that formula. And so what I learned about batching was how do you basically take the content that you're producing for your show and bring it into a set period of time so that the time that you're using is actually much more effective. So what we did, as opposed to having interviews all over the place at all different times, this year I went about setting interview weeks. And what I mean by that is I now have a 12-month calendar, 1 week per month, when all of the interviews are done for the upcoming month. I cannot tell you the difference this has made. So it means that I've got 1 week, all the interviews are done. The other 3 weeks, I can edit, script, do everything else that I need to do for the show. But all of those interviews are pulled into one specific week. From a mental clarity point of view, it makes a huge difference. And for anyone that's thinking, well, that's not relevant for me because I'm not going to do interviews on my show, I'm just going to do a podcast, which is just me speaking. It doesn't matter because you're always going to create bulk content. You're always going to have a time where you're, hey, Bronnie, hi, Angela, thank you so much for tuning in. You're always going to have a time where you need to create large quantities of content, and batching is a really, really great way to do that. So let's put it into the context of, let's say if I'm a personal trainer and I want to do a show about how I might be aimed at new mums, for example. What you're going to do is say, okay, well, maybe 1 week a month of my show, when I'm doing a weekly show, in that 1 week, that's going to be purely my planning and content creation week. The other 3 weeks I'm going to leave for other activities that are involved in running my business or other parts of the show that I'm doing. But 1 week is dedicated to creating content. It might be to recording voiceovers for your podcast. It might be to reaching out to experts or doing some research about the shows. It might be planning the next 4 weeks for shows. Whatever it is, the concept of batching is a way that you can become much more efficient with your processes. So if you want to know more about that, feel free to just write the word batching in the comments, and I'm happy to have a chat to you or answer any questions you might have about that. But as I said, implementing that 1 week per month for us to do interviews has made a massive, massive difference for the show. So that's number one. Let's park that over there. Okay, the second thing that I want to talk to you guys about is repurposing the show. So you've invested in creating this podcast for yourself. You want to get up and running with the show, and you pour, let me tell you, an awful lot of time into creating your content, into producing a show, into coming up with an audio piece of content that you're putting out to the world and you're putting out to your listeners. It's not as simple as just jumping on and having a chat, although some people do that and they do it successfully. But chances are, if you want to create a relationship with your audience, if you want to position yourself as an expert in your particular field, then you're going to be putting time and effort and energy into scripting your podcast, into coming up with your content, into deciding what shows are going to be valuable for your listeners. So if you're going to invest all that time, then you want to make the most out of your finished product, right? Now, I would say again, for the first kind of 12 months of the show, maybe even more, maybe the first 2 years of our show, we just produced an audio file. So we just had an audio-based product that we would put onto iTunes and onto the website, and that's how people consume the show. But what we realized is that not everyone is audio friendly, or some people really like to listen to the audio, but they also like to be able to have something tangible and read after they've listened. And I must admit, personally, I learn like that as well. Like I listen to everything, but sometimes I love to just print off a page and highlight the main points to take away, or just print it off to get it into my head, I guess. So what we started to do was, hey, Donna, welcome along. Thank you. It's so lovely to see you. So what we started to do was transcribe the shows. And I've talked about Rev before, I think in some previous episodes. There's an amazing company called Rev that transcribe interviews from audio or from video directly into a written format. It is so easy. It's not expensive. And what it means is that all of a sudden you've got a written file for your show that you've produced. So it's just another way that people can consume your information. The other thing, of course, you can do, which we now do, is there's a really simple way to turn your audio into a YouTube video. Now, you can't obviously produce a video out of nothing, but what you can do is automatically, literally with one button on Libsyn. And if you're not sure about what Libsyn is, then go back a couple of shows, because I talk about how to upload your podcast onto iTunes. And in that episode, I talk all about Libsyn and explain what that is. But in Libsyn, you can literally upload your audio file, which is going to go onto iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify and all the places that you want it to go. Hit one button and it also automatically goes onto your YouTube channel. Now that is seriously cool technology. It's only new. We've only started doing it in the last couple of months, but the second you hit publish, it goes onto your website. It goes onto, iTunes, those platforms, and it goes onto YouTube. Now, if you're wondering what that looks like, it basically means that when you go onto your YouTube channel, and let's say today I just released an episode with the incredible Amanda Stevens, who's talking about customer service and customer experience in your gym. When you have a look at the video, it basically just has the logo. So it has the Fitness Business Podcast logo in our case. You press play and you listen to the interview. So it's not like you're seeing moving pictures and video and stuff, but it is in a video file format, I guess you'd say, which means it just gives another opportunity to reach more audience, a larger audience, because you've got that sitting on YouTube. I hope all of that makes sense. Give me a bit of a thumbs up, give me a love heart, something, if this is all making sense so far. All of our repurposing. I hope it is, and I hope it's valuable to you guys. So yeah, they're just a couple of ways that you can actually repurpose your material. Another thing that I have found to be really useful with the transcript, which I mentioned, is that when you want to post social media tiles and you want to post your social media to basically promote, thank you for the thumbs up, guys. When you want to post your social media to promote a show that you've done, it is so much easier to be able to go to the transcript and just pull out bits of copy. So pull out maybe their top takeaways. For us, we do a segment called Fit Bizpiration, which is like their top 3 takeaways that every guest finishes the show. It's so easy with a transcript just to highlight, pull it out, and then whack it into your social media promotion or social media tile. So that's just another tip and another way of making the most out of the content that you get. There is one more thing that just popped into my head, and that is ebooks. So hopefully for any of you guys that are listening in at the moment that are regular listeners of the show, hopefully you know that we actually create these really comprehensive ebooks of our intensive series. And the benefit of doing that is, again, it's another kind of value proposition for your listeners. Let's go back to the example that I talked about with let's say I'm a personal trainer and my target audience is mums. And let's say, for example, 4 weeks of my podcast is all about the best nutrition tips for new mums. For example, imagine how easy it would be as if you just did that whole piece on audio. Maybe you've got 4 20-minute shows, which is all about nutrition for mums. You've put that out into the world as an audio file. You might have ticked that button to make it go to video as well. You've transcribed those files through Rev or through a service that you've used. It is super, super easy for you to then grab those transcripts and convert them into an ebook. And how amazing is that value for your followers or your listeners or your community that they can then go and download an ebook which is all about nutrition for new mums. So that's one of the things I love about podcasting, is just how flexible it is and how much you can get the most out of an audio file and get the most out of your content. So I hope that's useful for you guys. If you want to know more about turning your audio files into a transcript and into an ebook, let me know. There's some great services out there that you can utilize. Even Fiverr provides a great service for creating ebooks or PDF downloads, that type of thing. So guys, that's it for today's show, and that's it for our podcast series. I hope that you have found it really useful. Donna, I've just seen your note saying, is that on Canva? No, it's actually, you can create, you can, but you can really inexpensively create ebooks on using Fiverr, to be honest with you. I would use Canva for things like your social media tiles, for creating PDFs. It's really useful for that. I love Canva. But for creating an ebook, it's a little bit more fiddly. So I would suggest for not much money. You can produce an ebook for about, $45 using Fiverr. It's not expensive at all if you've got, if it's maybe something around 25 pages. I'm just throwing some numbers out there, but honestly, it's super easy to produce that and just create it as a PDF downloadable file that you can put on your website. So I know, Patrick, what are you going to watch next week? I'll tell you what you're going to watch next week. So here's what's going to happen coming up. So I'm going to kind of mix up these Facebook Lives a little bit. We've obviously had a lot of consistency with doing this series, but there's a couple of things that I want to show you guys that we haven't kind of dived into before. There's some stuff on the website that I'm going to show you. So we're going to have some random kind of things. The other thing that I want to start doing is, because we've planned so far in advance with a lot of our guests now, I actually want to get your suggestions and your feedback on some of the questions that we ask the guests. So one of the things that I'm going to do with these live broadcasts is talk to you about the guests that are coming up and the topics that are coming up. And I'm hoping that you guys are going to be able to give me some suggestions, depending on, how relevant that topic is for you personally. Hopefully you can give me some suggestions and maybe some ideas of what we can ask the guests so that they're answering the questions that you most want to know about. So Patrick, that is what we're going to do next week. Now, it's not necessarily going to be at this time, so make sure that you keep an eye out. I'll always let you know when I'm going to be live, but it won't necessarily always be at this time, so stay tuned. Donna, let's have a look. What is it called? Fiverr. It's Fiverr. It's Fiverr. Fiverr is Fiverr, okay? I also wanted to let you guys know some exciting news, and I don't think I've told you this already, but just in case anyone is going to be at Idea World in San Diego in June, July this year, I'm going to be speaking at Idea World, and I'm really, really excited. I'm going to be speaking about 3 different topics. One, which is success strategies of ultra high performance. The other one, which is, I'm just reading your comments. The other one that I'm talking about is how to find your micro niche in the fitness industry, which I am so excited to speak about. I've been doing a lot of research over the past sort of 6 to 12 months on that. And the third thing I'm talking about is the power of podcasts, and that's happening at Blogfest on the Friday, the 29th of June. So I'm going to be coming to you live from San Diego a few times over that week, and that's in the last week of June. So that's also really exciting. One more thing. It's been a long one today, hasn't it? 20 minutes. One more thing, make sure you check out today's episode. It features Amanda Stevens. Now, Amanda was one of the keynote speakers at the Philex Business Summit this year. She is an expert when it comes to customer service, customer experience. She's got some really, really good suggestions for how to enhance the customer experience within your facility and with your clients. So that show is currently available now. It is show 171. I just checked it before and it's already up on the website and it's up on iTunes, so make sure you check it out. Hey guys, Callan, hey, nice to see you. You've just come in right at the end, Callan. I've finished all the good stuff. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. It was great to see all of you online. If you have any questions about today's episode, make sure that you let me know. And don't forget, if you want to go back and check out any of those previous episodes on how to start your very own podcast, you can find them all on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel. Just search for Fitness Business Podcast. Over and out from a very cold Sydney morning. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week with some surprises and some really exciting guests coming your way. See you all. Have a fantastic day, guys.